authors. And as
Thank you.
Sunit mentioned before, thanks for writing the book, Mastering PyTorch. It has been really welcomed by the community as the reviews on the Amazon page shows. And it's a fantastic book,
Thank
right?
you.
Yeah. So to begin with, let's start with what was your motivation to write the book?
All right. So I will be honest. Firstly, I did not mean to write a book initially, right? So, like a regular person, writing a book seems like one of those daunting tasks, that rarely comes to mind to do by myself. But then lately, I was writing a few blogs, um, and the common theme was to make information that might look intimidating, easily graspable to the audience. So I'm always after that, bridging the gap basically. And somewhere in between this process, when I was writing the blogs, Pact and I crossed paths, and so someone from Pact reached me out, and given like the practical nature of the book that was being offered to be written, it just couldn't get any better, so I just said yes. So that's where it started.
Great, great. So perhaps, Ashish, you can speak about the time when you were considering like building the outline. What
Hmm.
was the life state back then? Like what kind of challenges were you facing when the idea actually, when we approached you to write the book?
Hmm.
If you can speak through those times and maybe challenges and those life state, because you might have gone through the entire process of developing an outline and then signing the contract and the writing journey. But when you are actually writing and designing the book, you
Hmm.
know, what was the state of mind back then?
Yeah, so it takes me back to May of 2020. So this was being discussed as a first edition, so nothing like from scratch. And when it first came to me, I have to give you a background of why this actually resonated with me. So for the longest time, I felt that there are two worlds where machine learning unfolds. There is like, and these two worlds are very different. One is the world of academia with all the complex equations written in the classical ML books or even research papers. And the other world is industry, where businesses want engineers, ML engineers, or data scientists to create AI products using the knowledge of ML or the ecosystem of tools around it. So the former, the world of academia, has a lot of resources, and I'm not the best person to contribute in that world. I don't even have a PhD. But the resources for the latter, they are at best scattered in the form of blogs, GitHub repositories, etc. So I had been wanting to bridge this gap and build some consolidated repository in some way or form, and especially coming from academia, doing a master's in computer science to industry very early on in my life. So
Right.
that's where the resonance came when I was approached to write a book on PyTorch. So I have been working on deep learning for a long time, and PyTorch is one of the most popular frameworks. So it gave the practical or the hands-on aspect immediately, and at the same time, I had some ideas in my head how to explain things in a more simple manner. So I wrote this book with the aim of explaining ML concepts and the tool, PyTorch in this case, in very plain, simple language, dropping all the complex jargons, and tried to make the reading experience 100% hands-on, which means that, for example, every chapter in this book has at least one exercise at the end in the form of a Jupyter notebook where the reader can go and try out what they have learned to see if they have learned it correctly. As regards to the whole circumstances and the process, so May 2020 was not a very usual time. It was actually the time when COVID had hit. So for me, it was also, if you might remember, it was a time for looking inwards. It actually was a good timing for me to be able to start investing some time towards writing the book. It was quite challenging, to be honest, because again, it was a first edition. I have never written a book before this from scratch. I wrote one with Pack previously, but that was a second edition, and that's a big difference. So yeah, I just started the initial discussions, writing some two-line summaries for the chapters, writing some drafts, iterating with the people around. And I have to mention here that the team at Pact was really amazing. Not just saying this because this is a video with Pact guys, but really that helped the motivation going, because it then becomes like, it just becomes a regular job. They help you maintain the project, the pace of the project. So I created the drafts, I started writing the initial chapters, and it was slightly turbulent in the beginning because I didn't have that rhythm. But within a few days, after I had written one or two chapters, I got the rhythm, and I could feel that now I can take it through all the way. So
Right.
yeah.
Thanks a lot. Sweet, would you like to ask any other?
Right. So, thank you for emphasizing on the outline stage, Ashish. One thing that I would like to ask you here is like, what aspects of the writing journey have you enjoyed the most? Like, was it managing the time for writing? Was it more to do with the creativity of, let's say, for example, writing the chapter from scratch? Or let's say, for example, marketing the title once a book got published?
All right. So that's actually a very fascinating question, and I think my experience has changed with time. So I would say I've enjoyed like the different stages of the whole process. In hindsight, of course, because in the moment we are always just worried about taking care of the stuff. But I have to here like emphasize on how this whole like when you are writing a book, it's actually like taking care of your baby in a way because the one thing that you know for sure that once it's going to be out, it is going to be out in your name. So you want to get it right, you want to get it done with high quality. So there was an inherent motivation to do it well during the process. So as I said, I found a rhythm to how I do things. So for each chapter, for example, I would have to first uh, make some code ready. I worked backwards, so I got the code ready first, just to make sure that what I'm trying to get across is available through code, and then I used to write the text, in fact, and also create some diagrams in support of the text. So there was a fair bit of leeway given, like a lot of creativity was applied by my side and was given by me to be done. So I enjoyed thoroughly that for sure. One thing I have gained from a lot through this process is I have myself understood the concepts even more deeply, because when you have to explain things to someone, that's when you are forced to go to the depths of that concept, because you really want to understand it yourself 100% well in order to communicate the point across. So that was another thing. And finally, like you mentioned the marketing aspect, and I did not foresee this before, like how much effort or how much of a part of the whole journey of writing a book is this whole marketing and promotional activity. So initially I was just worried, and like this was causing stress to me because I did not know how to do it, because I did not really have any experience doing such a thing. But again, I have to be thankful that I in the whole process not only got used to it, but I think I enjoyed it amongst the most in the whole project, which also helps me like have a channel to communicate with thousands of people. And for example, it's so satisfying when someone randomly reaches out to me asking questions about the book, that the code is not working or what did you mean here. So yeah, I mean, I think I have enjoyed fairly the different phases of this whole process.
That's
That's a
great,
great
Ashish.
answer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
just wanted to kind of ask a supplementary question to what Suneet has asked, that this was your first edition. You had written a previous book before, but that
Hmm.
was a second edition, and you might have written partly.
Uh-huh.
But writing this as a first edition, there would have been various challenges, and you said
Hmm.
marketing was one such way. Was it like the biggest challenge, or do you think designing an outline or maybe getting the writing rhythm? You said you initially
Hmm.
struggled. Was that the challenging part? What would you say was the most challenging
Hmm.
aspect?
Uh-huh. Um, so I think the challenges, it's very difficult to compare them directly because they are of very different nature. The and to some people, so why I'm saying it's difficult to compare is because I just can't give one objective answer, because for different people different phases could be challenging in different ways. So for me, um, if I had to quantify something here, I would say the aspect of finding the time management, the rhythm, was maybe the most challenging, especially given that it was a single author first edition book. I was the only person responsible for writing everything from scratch. So if I try to recollect those times, what happens is you start writing the first chapter, right? And you give the first draft to the team. Then you keep on writing serially all the chapters, but you forget something, that the reviews will come to you. So while you are at chapter 7, you have the language review of chapter 6 with you to be done again. You have the technical review of chapter 5. You have the editorial review of chapter 4, and so on, all coming together at the same time. So to be able to foresee these and to be able to manage your time through these, that was, I think, a very good learning experience and also a challenge initially. But again, I think marketing initially was also a huge challenge, because I can also tell you from my personal account that I'm not a very big fan of social media, so I'm not really there much. But just for this book, I had to create my Facebook account. I had to create my Twitter account. So and this was a new thing I learned, so that's why this is a challenge in its own way. It's not a big deal for maybe someone who is very used to social media. So different aspects could be challenging more or less depending on how someone is. But yeah, I think the time management is definitely something one should really look ahead and like foresee whether they can do this or not.
Right, just slightly digressing here because you answered about the writing journey part and you were going through a rhythm and then the reviews started to appear. Is the experience similar when you code? Because you are also, you must have a certain rhythm to code your program. And then
Mhm.
there are other people who are working on that code and they start, asking for say more features or, coming up with bugs. So was there any kind of relation to that world to this world, or is it quite separate?
No, there was similarities here as well, and I can like precisely remember what used to happen. Firstly, you get the code published, then there is a technical review. So there could be some things, issues with how to run this code on different operating systems, on different devices, because you as an author, you will try to run that code locally on your own setup, but then there is someone, the team, who is trying to run it on different environments, so you have to make it environment friendly. Then
Right,
it's also about some peculiarities, such as where will this code end up. So in my case, I was writing Jupyter notebooks locally, but the team decided that we should put them on Google Colab so that people can just access it on the cloud. And then there
right,
were some additions to be made. So again, this is very similar to the textual part of the book, where you have to make iterations. The code also, you have to keep iterating. But for me, because I work in my day-to-day life, I don't write texts as much as I write code. This was easier
right.
for me, but writing the text again and again, or refactoring, was slightly more challenging.
Great, right. And if you can tell us what has actually happened after you have written the book, like has there been any speaking gigs or has there been any consultancy work, or maybe just how has community reacted to it? You must be in touch with a lot of the readers who have, you just mentioned that they have reached out to you. So if
Hmm.
you can say something on
Yeah,
that.
so I would say, like, ever since, like, I've done this book, I won't say I'm popular, but I will say that I'm satisfied. So basically, firstly, besides all of the external factors, I have been able to communicate the ideas and concepts very clearly, which about which I also got some personal feedback from people within the machine learning community, which whom I know, who are really good at very good, well-respected jobs, and they have given me good feedback about the book, how simplistic and easy to understand it is. So that's one. The other thing is, yes, it has helped me to reach out to so many people just at once. This is a this is a way of communicating with thousands of people potentially. So it has given me a lot of visibility for sure. There have been moments when people reach out to me asking questions, and it's so satisfying when you realize that people are actually reading this and learning from this. So yeah, overall, this has been a very good experience for me inwards, like for learning, and also outwards to communicate and to get known within people. I have spoken about the book at a few occasions, also within my own company. I spoke about my book, and many of my team members bought it, and like some of my colleagues who are not within machine learning but they want to learn, they actually read it, for example, and they found this very easy to grasp. So that these kind of feedbacks are very useful and satisfying to hear when you are able to get the point across, which was the original point. So yeah.
That's great. Sunit,
Yeah, just a follow-up question here, Ashish. Like, what was the best testimonial or best compliment that you have got for this book? Would you like to shed some light on that aspect?
All right. So if I remember, like this is the one thing I remember very clearly. So at my own job, my own manager, he is not a very technical person, but he wants aspires to be like learning more about machine learning and stuff. And not only did he give good feedback about the book upon reading, he actually discussed with me so many points in such details, and like he could understand uh, what exactly I meant to do in certain chapters, and he had a review of the book as if you would review a movie or a novel. So that was really satisfying on the one hand. On the other hand, I have also another anecdote of sharing this book with some of the students, current students in my um, university where I studied in India, in IIT Roorkee. So I got some excellent feedback from students there as well, and so it was very satisfying again to see like, yeah, my juniors in a way learning things about machine learning, deep learning from this book. And also, just a quick note, the foreword of this book is written by the head of department of of electrical department in IIT Turkey. So yeah, my professor also promoted this book there. So that was also a very satisfying feature to realize that I can help my own university in some ways. So yeah.
That's really great, Ashish. Great to know. One thing which I'm very interested to know here is like say, like you mentioned, someone from Packt had contacted you in the month of May to
Mhm.
write a book. So, what was your first goal? I mean, why did you wanted to write the book in first place? Like, what do you want to achieve for yourself or the community? Would you like to talk about that?
hmm So as I mentioned previously, bridging the gap is my thing. I always like, because I have spent enough time in machine learning. I now feel that I have some information, at least to be able to share with people. And I have seen enough people who get intimidated from this field before they even try, because the legendary books written in this field by, let's say, Bishop, etc., they are too difficult. Like, they are even difficult for me to understand still some of the chapters. So I don't think someone who works as a machine learning engineer or data scientist needs that level of understanding immediately. They can learn that, but they can go through a simpler process. So bridging the gap was my thing. I had read a book long ago called Head First Java. I don't know if you have read that book. It's a book which is like so illustrative. Even I think my mom can understand somewhat about Java just by reading that book. So my goal was just to write something similar, but for deep learning, because these kind of concepts, this they are like they are not that difficult, but they are made to seem so difficult because of the available resources. So I was just trying to bridge the gap. That was my main goal, and I was just trying to find a niche. How do I present myself? So that's where this whole mastering PyTorch, like PyTorch, using this as a framework, this came in very handy. So and Packt reaching out to me instead of me having to randomly go out to publishers with a draft proposal, calling them to motivate them to publish a book, that would be too difficult alongside a full-time job. So I think this is where Packt really made it easy as well for me.
Great, great. Thanks a lot, Ashish, for that great answer. I just have one final
Mhm,
question. As you know, we are very particular about who we work with. So I would like
mhm.
to ask, what would you say to someone who we are in conversation with, who is looking to write a book with us? And you can be brutally honest about this.
So you mean from Packt's perspective, what would I have?
Yeah, so somebody who reaches out to us and say has an idea and wants to
Mhm,
write a book and is a first time author and has no writing experience,
mhm.
would you have any feedback for that person?
So I would say having some writing experience, like in the form of blogs or something, that just demonstrates that the person has an edge for being creative at what they do, have an understanding, and also shows the style of how they write. That would be a good indicator, and also someone who has somewhat enough experience, because and maybe I'm wrong here, but someone who has a 10 years experience in something versus someone with 1 year experience, the person with 1 year might be really fiery with a lot of ideas. But I feel for any field, you need to spend enough time, like somewhat enough time, to really see that field from all dimensions, to be able to assess. So even I can say that this book, if I wrote 5 years later, would have been maybe finer or like more broad, more complete, more concrete. So someone with more experience, someone who has demonstrated a writing experience in some ways or shape. And I think as a trait, someone who has a lot of attention to detail is really important, because while you're writing a book, I noticed this, that you have to do maybe more than 10 reviews of each chapter while you finish the book. And at each review you have to look at each word as if you are looking at it the first time. So that's a trait to look for as well. Like if someone is just rushing to get it done, just maybe to get their name on the map, that might not be the best motivation. But if someone is actually passionate, and you can see that passion demonstrated in some shape or form, that would be the golden territory to look for.
Such a great answer, Ashish, because I can relate to your previous answer also when you said there are a lot of parallels with coding, and
Hmm.
so where also one needs a lot of attention to detail, and
Exactly.
one small line can add to a lot of cost involved.
Hmm.
So I think that's a great
Precisely.
answer. Yeah, and
Thank you.
I think WordPress has that tagline, "Code is poetry," and so I think it's similar to that. So
Yeah,
yeah.
you can say that. Yeah, yeah.
Thanks a lot, Ashish, for agreeing to do this. And I'm sure there are a lot of great books in you that we are going to see in the future. So
Sure.
all the
Thank
best
you so
for
much.
your writing assignment. Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Kunal. Thank you, Sunit, for this great conversation.